Colosseum, how to set up and play. To set up the game, lay out the game board. Put each player's score token on 0. Each player will lay out a Colosseum on the board based on the number of players. So you can see this spot is used in a 3 or a 5-player game. Some of the spots are used precisely in this case for a 4-player game. A Colosseum would go here. If it's exactly a 5-player game, a Colosseum would go here. If it's a 4 or a 5-player game, a Colosseum would go there. Next, you're going to lay out the noble pawns. The yellows are the senators. They go on the yellow spot. The blues are the consuls. They'll go on the blue spot. And there's one emperor token, one emperor pawn, and he'll go on the red spot. Whoever Colosseum is closest to the emperor, going clockwise, will become the start player. So you can randomize this. In this example, the yellow will become the start player for the first round of the game. Next, you're going to shuffle up the starting event programs into 2 stacks. The first stack are numbered 1 through 5, and the second stack is numbered 6 through 10. Shuffle each of these stacks and give each player 1 from each stack. So this player randomly got the 3 and the 8 program, and this player randomly got the 2 and the 10 program. The starting event programs that aren't used are simply removed from the game. Each player will also start with 30 coin or 30 denarii. Next, you're going to shuffle and deal the random asset tiles to start the game. These are the starting asset tiles. They have the blue and the green back. You're going to shuffle all these together and deal a random number to each player based on the player count. So I'm setting this up for a 3-player game. So in a 3-player game, each player would get 8 randomly. If this is a 4-player game, they would get 6. And in a 5-player game, each player would get 5. If a player ever has at least 3 of the same tile and they have the most, they get the star performer token to go with it. So this player has 4 gladiators and no other player has more gladiators than them, so they get this. This player has 3 horses. Now if another player had 3 horses, then neither player would get the star performer, but since they're the only one with 3 and they have the most, they'll get the star performer token right from the start of the game. Now this can be lost. If another player was to get a 3rd horse and neither player had the most, this would simply get returned to the supply. Or if another player exceeded their amount, that player would get the star performer. And so you can keep the star performers up here and they can get exchanged throughout the game, basically to whoever player has the most, as long as they have at least 3. For the remainder of the starting asset tiles, you're going to deal 15 into the center of the board into 5 groups of 3 each, and that's done randomly. In a 3 or a 4-player game, you're going to have 1 left over. You can put that off to the side, and that can be the first one used to refill the market. Next, you'll take the normal asset tiles, the one with the yellowish lion, and place all those into the bag. And those will be used to refill the market during the game. Next, just create a general supply. These are all the event program tiles. These are the Colosseum extensions in each player color. These are the season ticket tiles. And these are the Emperor Loge tiles. You'll create the money supply. You'll also set out the stack of Emperor medals. These are the Podium tiles. There's 2 dies. And then, as we talked about, all of the star performer tokens. Finally, you're going to set out the round or the turn marker. The game is played in 5 turns or rounds. Each round has 5 phases that you can see on this player aid. In phase 1, each player will get a chance to invest in their Colosseum. In phase 2, we're going to auction for sets of resources. In phase 3, we're going to trade resources and money. In phase 4, each player is going to produce an event. And in phase 5, we do closing ceremonies and round cleanup. So let's take a look at each of the phases. Phase 1 is the invest phase. This is done in turn order. So starting with the start player and then proceeding clockwise, each player may make one investment. They can acquire a new event program. They can purchase season tickets for 10 coins. They can purchase an Emperor's Lodge for 5 coins. Or they can do an arena expansion for 10 coins. So let's look at each of these. The first one is the expand the Colosseum. They can ever only do 2 expansions. So the first one, they could do 1 expansion of their Colosseum. Basically, they just slide this in either direction and place it there. If it ever slid to include where a noble was, you can just put that noble there and he's now part of the arena. Larger arenas give more of an opportunity for nobles to land and view your events. Also, larger arenas are required to support the larger programs. So you can see this set of programs requires at least 3 spaces in the arena, and these high-end programs require you to have the maximum of 4 spaces in your arena. The next type of investment you can do are in season tickets. Season tickets cost 10 coins. There is no limit to the number of season tickets you can add to your Colosseum. So you can add multiple throughout the game. Obviously, during the invest phase, you're only allowed to make 1 investment. And season tickets, when we put on a program, they will give you 5 extra spectators towards your program score. The next type of investment you can make is into an Emperor's Lodge. An Emperor's Lodge costs 5 coins. You can ever only have 1 of those as a maximum, and what this allows is when we roll the dice during the perform event phase, you can roll 2 dice instead of 1. The final investment you can make is to purchase a new event program. The cost of the event program is up here in the upper right, so this one costs 13 coins to purchase. It's okay to acquire an event program even if your Colosseum can't support it yet. You won't be able to put it on until your Colosseum can support it. This is the event program number. All the event programs are unique, so once an event program is taken by a player, obviously it's not available to any other player. This lists the number of resources required to put on the event program. If you're able to put on and supply all the resources, you're going to score 17 attendance or 17 points, and this indicates how many you're going to score if you're missing any of the resources or assets. So if you're missing 1 asset, instead of scoring 17, you're going to score 14. Here, you're allowed to miss up to 5 assets, but you're only going to score 2 points for this program. The back of the player aid shows all of the event program numbers. They're organized into the 2 stacks. These are the ones that can be supported with 3 spaces in your Colosseum, and these red ones require that you have the maximum Colosseum size of 4 spaces, and you can see the assets required going across each row, and then you can see all the programs that require a specific type of asset. And at the very bottom, it lists how many types of assets there are in the game. So for trading purposes, you can see there's 20 gladiators where there's only 11 ships. So ships are intrinsically more valuable than gladiators since they're rarer in the game. The player aid will also show you the cost for each program along with the maximum attendance score you can earn if you meet all of the asset requirements. Normally during the invest phase, each player is only allowed to make 1 investment in their Colosseum, but there is a way you can make additional investments. If you discard 2 Emperor medals, these are the back of the Emperor medals, you can make an additional investment. Or if you discard one of these special asset tiles, you can make an additional investment in phase 1, the asset stage. There are no limits to the number of Emperor medals you want to play during a given phase or tokens, and the additional investment you make can be the same or different than the one you made with your regular action. In phase 2, we're going to auction for asset tiles. So starting with the starting player, whoever's the current starting player, they're considered the active player. They select one of these groups and may place a starting bid on the group. The minimum starting bid they can declare is 8. They can start with a higher bid if they like, or they do have the option to pass. But if they pass, they're dropping out of the entire phase. So most of the time, the starting player is going to select one of these groups and make a bid of 8 or higher. Bidding is going to proceed clockwise, with each player getting an opportunity to either raise the bid or pass. If they pass out, they're dropping out of this specific option. They're not dropping out of the entire phase, but they're dropping out of the auction for whatever set the active player selected. So two things can happen. Either the active player can win the auction, or one of the other players can win the auction. If one of the other players win, let's say this is the set being auctioned, one of the other players won other than the active player, now what the active player has to do, they're still making a decision, they select one of the remaining groups. This will not get refilled. So the active player always knows that one of the 5 sets that they started with, that's all they're ever going to have available to them. So they can auction off another set. If another non-active player won, those would get taken, and then they'd have to choose from one of the remaining 3 sets. Now, if the active player wins the auction, then you always refill all the way back up to 5 sets, and drawing from the bag to refill this market. So the next active player in the auction will have all the sets available to them, and you repeat the process. Play will proceed until all players have won or purchased 1 set of asset tiles. So if a player has already won a set of 3 tiles, they're not eligible to participate in any future auctions, even when it gets to their turn as the active player. Now, there is a variant called intense auctions, where each player is allowed to win 1 set per active player. One consideration during the auctions, if players have Emperor medals, an Emperor medal can always be discarded at any time, and one of the things you can acquire from it is 6 coins. So you are allowed to bid with money you don't have, and then as long as you're able to, once you've won the auction, discard this, collect the money. So you can bid beyond your funds as long as you have this in reserve. And besides the 12 regular types of asset tokens, there are 3 special types of asset tokens. You've seen this one already. This one can be discarded to get an extra investment during the investment phase, or you can discard it to get an Emperor's medal. This token can simply be discarded to get an Emperor's medal. And this one can be used as a wild or a joker when completing any event program. Just keep in mind it will not count towards earning a star performer token. You still need at least 3 naturals and having the most to get one of those. But this will help you as a wild card during event programs. If this one's drawn, you have to immediately discard it from the game to get an Emperor's medal, and this one can be held for either discarding for an Emperor's medal or to get that extra investment during phase 1. Phase 3 is the trading phase, where players can trade any combinations of asset tokens and money. You can trade 2 for 1 or 3 for 1 or 2 for 10 denarii, any combination of tokens and money. Now, the normal rules of the game state that trading happens in turn order. So you would start with the start player, and it's only that start player that can make the trades. So the trades would only be 1-to-1 with another player. I play with the variant house rule, where it's free-form trading. So we don't go in turn order, we just open a trading phase, and then negotiations and trades can be made free-form between any players. You can form 3-way trades. Basically, there's no restrictions on the trade except for the fact that you can never trade for future promises. You have to trade for actual asset tokens and money. And then when everyone's done, we just simply end the phase. The next phase is the produce an event phase. This is done in turn order, starting with the start player. The first thing the player will do is roll their dice. So they'll always roll at least one die. If they have an Emperor's Loge, they can roll 2 dice. If they only had one die, let's say that example, let's say this rolled this side, which is a 1 to 3 range, you can move any of the nobles on the board. You can only move them clockwise, and you move them the value stated. So sometimes it'll be a hard value. Here was a range, so I can move one noble up to 3 spots, 1, 2, or 3 places. So normally you want to move them to get inside of your arena, or you want to move them so they end their movement on one of these spaces so you can earn an Emperor's Medal. When you're rolling 2 dice, you have a couple different options. You can move nobles independently, or I can move one noble the total sum of the dice. So I can move one noble anywhere from 6, so 5 plus 1, I can move them 6, 7, or 8, 5 plus 3. So I could move one noble 8 spots. Now if they cross over an Emperor's Medal, they don't get it. It's only if they end their movement on the Emperor's Medal. I could also move 2 separate nobles with each die value. So maybe I'll use this die to move this noble 1, the 1 to 3 range, and I'll use the 5 to move this one 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so I can earn an Emperor's Medal and take that immediately, which I can use immediately if I like. Keep in mind, it is allowed for multiple pawns to occupy the same space. So both pawns could end on the same space, that's fine. After you've completed your die movement, you are allowed to discard or return actually one of your Emperor's Medals. Whenever these get played, they get returned to the general supply. They don't leave the game, so they become available to other players because they are limited. But you could return this to move one of the pawns forward or backwards 1, 2, or 3 spaces. So I may decide to return this to the game, and I'm going to move this consul 1, 2, 3 to get him in my Colosseum ready for event scoring. Keep in mind when you play that Emperor's Medal, that happens after the die movement, and also you could never collect an Emperor's Medal from discarding one. So I couldn't discard one to go 1, 2, 3 and then get another Emperor's Medal. You can only collect one Emperor's Medal through the die movement. So once you've completed your movement, you announce which program you're going to put on, and now you score how many spectators were part of that event. So you're going to look at the value of the event program. You can add 5 spectators for each previous event you produced. So whenever you complete an event, you turn it over, and then it'll score you 5 towards all future events, and you can have multiple of these turned over. Also keep in mind, you can decide to repeat a previous event. Maybe I want to put this event back on. You'd have to flip it over to do this event again, meaning you wouldn't earn that 5 bonus because you flipped it back over, but then once you complete it again, it would flip over. But let's assume I completed this in a past one, so this would account towards my score this round. You get 5 spectators for each season ticket you have in your Colosseum. You get +4 for each star performer, as long as they participated in the event. You get 7 for the Emperor, 5 for each consul, there's 2 on the board. You get 3 for each senator, there's 2 on the board. 3 for each podium, which we'll talk about. And then 3 if you turn in an Emperor's Medal. So Emperor's Medal can give you +3 spectators. Remember, there's no limit. So if you turn in 3 of these, you can get 9 additional spectators. So let's go over a quick example. Let's say I'm putting on this event. It's later in the game, so my Colosseum can support it since it has at least 3 spots. I need 3 gladiators, which I have. I have 4. I need 3 ships. I only have 1, but I have a joker, so I'll let a joker count for 1 of those. So I'm short 1 ship, and I don't have any of the green tiles or the plants. So I'm really short 3. So a -3, you can see I'm going to score 8 spectators for this program. On top of that, I get to add 5 for each of my previously completed events. So there's an additional 5. I get 5 for each season ticket. So I have 1 season ticket. So there's 5. 5 for the console. 3 for the senator, since they're in my arena. I also have the Star Gladiator token. So that would be an additional 4. I have the Star Horse, but you can see the horse did not participate in this event. So that doesn't count. It's only the Star Performer if that tile type was used during the event. So you're going to add up your total attendance score, and 2 things are going to happen. You're immediately going to get that number in coins from the bank based on your attendance score, and then you'll possibly update your high score on the scoring track. The scores in this game are not cumulative, so from round to round, you're only indicating what your highest score was in that specific turn. So as an example, let's say I scored 27 in a prior round, but in this round, my attendance was only 25. I would get 25 coins from the bank, but I would not adjust my score marker since it did not exceed my personal best. Whereas if I scored 30 this round, I would get 30 coins from the bank, and then my current score would be updated to my highest score. And that's actually how the winner of the game is determined. It's whoever puts on the single highest, most viewed event in any of the 5 rounds. The final thing you'll do is flip over the event, which will now give you an additional 5 spectators on all future events. So in turn order, each player gets to roll the dice, put on the event, and then it goes to the next player. In Phase 5, we put on closing ceremonies, which is a cleanup round. So 3 main things happen in the cleanup round, Phase 5. So first off, the leading player earns a podium. It's not necessarily who put on the biggest event that turn, it's whoever's the current leading player on the score track. They will get one of these podium tiles. So there's 4 of these in the game. 1 will be given out at the end of each of the first 4 rounds. These get placed on your Colosseum or in your personal supply. Now these provide an additional 3 spectators for all future events, and these can stack. If there's a tie on the score track, then whoever is the richest player would get the podium that round. If there's still a tie, then just randomize it with the die roll. Next, each player must discard 1 asset token that was used in the latest event. So in the example I covered, this was the event I put on, so I'm going to have to discard an asset token of 1 of these. So maybe I'll decide to discard either the gladiator or the ship. Be careful, when you discard it, it may force you to return the Star Performer tile. So each player has to discard a tile that was used in the event put on that round. The tile discarded does not get returned to the bag, it just gets removed from the game. Finally, the player in last place gets to steal an event asset token from the leader. So they can take any token they like from their supply, as long as it's not one of the 3 special tokens. So they can't take one of those 3. If there's a tie for the last place player on the score track, then whoever's the poorest player would get to steal, and if there's still a tie, randomize it with a die roll. Once you've done all 3 of these steps, you're going to move the turn marker forward 1 round. You're also going to rotate the first player marker to the left or clockwise of whoever holds it currently. So start player will change at the end of every round. The game's going to end at the end of the 5th turn or round. In the 5th turn, you don't complete the closing ceremony. Basically, at the end of the Phase 4, when everyone produces their event, you're going to see check score track, and then whoever's highest on score track, basically whoever's put on the greatest event through one of the first 5 rounds of the game, is going to be declared the winner. If there's still a tie, the richest player will win, and if still tied, you look at who has the most star performers at the end of the game. And that's everything you need to set up and play Colosseum.